Mrs. Hollis is no longer authorized to enter the arena floor. Serena's voice came through the overhead speakers, with the gentle firmness of a woman announcing a weather delay. 600 guests sat beneath warm white lights as every face turned toward me. A security guard stood at my elbow, holding out his hand for the brass founder's badge clipped to my jacket. I had worn that badge for 19 years. My son had designed it. My husband had polished the first one by hand. And now my daughter-in-law was removing it in front of donors, reporters, veterans, grieving families, and the Lexington horse community. Serena smiled from the stage. May has given Ashgrove everything, she said. But after several recent safety incidents, she has agreed that retirement is the responsible choice. I had agreed to no such thing. Still, I did not argue. I unclipped the badge, placed it in the guard's palm, and walked toward the arena gate. Behind me, polite applause began to rise. They thought I was leaving. Instead, I opened the gate and led in a chestnut mare that Ashgrove's record said had been dead for 6 months. Before I tell you how a dead horse walked into that arena, let me know where you're listening from. If you have ever been pushed aside by someone who mistook patience for weakness, tap like and subscribe. Some people only understand your value after they try to erase it. The mare's hooves struck the packed clay in a slow, even rhythm. One step, then another, the applause died. Serena stopped speaking. Her hand remained wrapped around the microphone, but her lips parted without producing a sound. Beside her stood Grant Vale, her younger brother, wearing a black suit and the expression of a man who had just seen a locked door swing open by itself. The mare came willingly at my shoulder. She was nervous beneath the lights, but she trusted my hand on the lead rope. Her registered name was Juniper. According to the casualty report Serena had signed, Juniper had died in a tackroom fire on January 17th. According to the insurance file, her body had been identified, removed, and cremated. According to Ashgrove's donor appeal, she had crossed peacefully beyond pain. That language had raised more than $80,000. But Juniper was breathing beside me. A ripple moved through the audience. Phones rose. Chairs scraped. Someone near the press table whispered her name. I stopped in the center of the arena and looked up at Serena. She recovered quickly. That was one of her gifts, May, she said, lowering the microphone as if speaking to a confused relative. That horse is not Juniper. I reached into my coat pocket and removed a blackened brass stall plate. Half the lettering had blistered away, but the stamped identification number was still readable. I set it on the judge's table. Then I looked toward the board members below the stage. Before you vote to sell my son's farm, I said, someone should explain why the dead keep coming home. The arena erupted. Serena called for security. Grant moved toward the side exit. 2 board members stood at once, each demanding that the other stop the proceedings. A news camera swung toward Juniper, and my grandson Eli sat in the front row staring at me as though I had driven a knife through his mother's heart. That look hurt more than the humiliation. I had prepared for Serena's anger, Grant's threats, the board's disbelief, and the possibility that I might still lose Ashgrove. I had not prepared for Eli to look at me like an enemy. But by then, there was no retreating. The papers Serena had signed were already in the hands of people who knew how to read them. The mare beside me carried proof no polished speech could bury. And somewhere behind the arena, a man who believed he had erased every original record was about to discover that fire does not always destroy what matters. My name is May Hollis. I was 71 years old that night, though Serena had spent the better part of a year making me sound ancient. For 35 years I investigated fires for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Barns, warehouses, feed mills, restaurants. I walked through the remains after the flames were gone and tried to determine where destruction had begun. Fire is honest about movement. It climbs, it follows fuel, it leaves clean areas where something blocked the heat and deeper burns where flame lingered. People may lie about a fire, but the walls rarely do. I should have remembered that when Daniel died, my son was 48, when a delivery truck crossed the center line on a rain-dark highway and struck his pickup. One moment he was driving home from a donor meeting. The next, a state trooper was standing on my porch with his hat in both hands. After the funeral, I stopped trusting my instincts. Grief can make guilt sound like wisdom. I blamed myself, because I had asked Daniel to attend that meeting. Serena blamed no one aloud. She simply stepped into his office, accepted the title of executive director, and told me she would protect everything he had built. I believed her because I needed to. 7 months before the gala, Ashgrove's Old West tack room caught fire just before dawn. The blaze was contained quickly. No people were injured. Serena told me one mare had been lost. Juniper. By the time I arrived, Grant's restoration crew had fenced off the area. Yellow tape snapped in the cold wind, the windows were black, and water ran in gray streams beneath the doors. Serena met me near the wash rack and took both my hands. "It was electrical," she said. "The fire captain is certain. Captains do not declare causes before investigators finish their work." I looked past her toward the sprinkler riser, mounted on the exterior wall. The control assembly was wet but not heat damaged. The red valve wheel sat at a slight angle. I asked Grant who had touched it. "No one," he said too quickly. I stepped closer. A properly opened control valve should have been turned fully counterclockwise and secured beneath a tamper switch. This one had fresh tool marks around the stem. The locking chain hung loose. More important, the wheel had been turned nearly closed before the fire reached the room. Someone had disabled the water supply, and they had done it by hand. I crouched beside the sprinkler assembly and ran one finger over the bright metal scratches around the valve stem. The marks were shallow and fresh. Someone had used a wrench, probably in a hurry, and failed to wipe away the evidence. Grant stepped between me and the wall. "You shouldn't be inside the perimeter," he said. "The restoration team has already documented everything." Grant Vale was 43, broad through the shoulders, with perfectly trimmed dark hair, and the confident impatience of a man accustomed to billing people before they asked what he had done. His company logo was already printed across 3 trucks parked beside the barn. Vale Restoration Services. He had arrived less than an hour after the fire department. That was remarkably fast for a contractor Serena claimed she had called after sunrise. "I'm not interfering," I said. "I'm looking. You're retired, May. Fire investigation isn't a switch in the head. You don't turn it off because someone throws you a luncheon." His jaw tightened. Behind him, workers carried scorched tack trunks through the open doors. They were moving quickly, disturbing debris, before the insurance investigator had arrived. One man swept blackened material into a wide plastic shovel and dumped it into a wheeled bin. "Stop moving that," I called. The worker froze. Grant did not. "We have animals to protect and a business to run," he said. "We can't preserve every piece of garbage because you feel nostalgic about your old job." Serena approached before I could answer. Her riding boots were spotless despite the mud, and her cream-colored coat made her look composed enough for a television interview. "Grant, give us a moment." He stared at me for another second, then walked toward the trucks. Serena placed a hand on my arm. "I know you're trying to help." It was one of her most effective phrases. It praised your intention while dismissing your judgment. "Then stop the cleanup," I said. "The scene hasn't been properly processed. The county investigator was here. For 20 minutes, he said the fire probably started in the old wiring behind the tack room refrigerator." "Probably is not a finding." Her expression remained patient. "May, we have frightened horses, soaked electrical systems, and a staff that has been awake since 4 in the morning. Grant is stabilizing the building. Grant is removing evidence." Her fingers slipped from my sleeve. For the first time that morning, warmth left her face. "You need to be careful with accusations," I asked. "Who closed the sprinkler valve?" "No one closed it. The system malfunctioned. That wheel didn't turn itself." Serena looked past me toward the barn, where a young reporter from a Lexington television station was speaking with one of the firefighters. Her concern shifted immediately from the fire to who might hear us. "Not here," she said quietly. That was Serena's first rule of leadership. Nothing uncomfortable happened where donors, cameras, or employees could witness it. I followed her into Daniel's old office. His name still appeared on the frosted glass. Daniel Hollis. Executive Director Serena had added a smaller brass plate below it with her own name. She told everyone she had kept Daniel's lettering as a tribute. I knew she kept it because his reputation opened doors that hers did not. The office smelled faintly of leather, coffee, and the cedar soap my son had used. His desk remained against the window. His framed photograph stood beside the lamp. Daniel at 38, one arm around my shoulders, and the other resting against the neck of a rescued gray gelding. He had been thinner then, newly home from military service, sleeping badly, speaking little, and pretending sudden noises did not affect him. Ashgrove began with that horse. My husband, Frank, and I owned 60 acres outside Lexington. Frank had grown tobacco before the market collapsed, then converted the fields to hay. After Daniel returned from overseas, he moved into the small guest house and avoided nearly everyone. One cold morning, a county deputy called about an abandoned gelding found tied beside a closed gas station. The animal was starved, scarred, and so frightened that no one could load him. Daniel went with me. He stood in that parking lot for 2 hours without trying to touch the horse. He simply remained close enough to be seen and far enough not to threaten him. Eventually, the gelding stepped forward. Daniel always said they rescued each other. Within 5 years, our hay farm became Ashgrove Equine Recovery Center. Frank built the first stalls. I handled safety inspections and grant applications after retiring. Daniel developed programs for veterans, firefighters, teenagers, and families surviving terrible losses. Serena entered his life during Ashgrove's first major fundraising campaign. She was skilled where Daniel was uncomfortable. She could walk into a room full of wealthy strangers and make each person believe their presence mattered. She improved the donor database, recruited board members, and brought polish to an organization still operating from folding tables. Daniel loved her. That had been enough for me. When Eli was born, Serena placed him in my arms and said, "Now Ashgrove belongs to another generation." I remembered those words after Daniel's death. They were the reason I ignored the first changes she made. She hired Grant as Ashgrove's emergency contractor without competitive bids. She replaced the longtime bookkeeper with an outside management service. She began referring to employees as legacy staff, which sounded respectful until people realized it meant outdated. Every decision came wrapped in necessity, professionalization, risk reduction, continuity. She never said she was taking Ashgrove away from me. She said she was protecting me from the burden of carrying it. Inside Daniel's office, Serena closed the door. "You haven't been sleeping," she said. "I sleep. You called Eli at 2 in the morning last week. A mare was colicking. You called him 3 times. He didn't answer the first 2. She sat behind Daniel's desk. That small act disturbed me more than it should have. Serena had used the office for months, but until then I had never seen her occupy his chair while speaking to me. "You feel responsible for Daniel's accident," she said. "That guilt is making you search for danger everywhere." I stared at her. "You think I imagined the tool marks?" "I think you saw something unusual and immediately assumed the worst, because that is how you were trained. That training kept people alive, and it may be preventing you from seeing what Ashgrove needs now." She opened a folder and slid a single-page letter across the desk. The letterhead belonged to our insurance carrier. It described me as an unmanaged operational risk and recommended that I be prohibited from entering barns, treatment areas, and fire-damaged structures unless accompanied by authorized staff. At the bottom, beneath the typed recommendation, was Serena's signature acknowledging immediate compliance. She had not asked for my opinion. She had already agreed to remove me. I read the insurance letter twice. The language was careful. It did not call me incompetent. It recommended temporary access controls until Ashgrove completed a safety review. Temporary made permanent decisions sound harmless. "When did they send this?" I asked. "Yesterday afternoon, and you signed it yesterday afternoon. We could not risk losing coverage." "You didn't call me. You are not the policyholder." That answer landed harder than I expected. Ashgrove had begun on my land, with my retirement savings, my husband's labor, and my son's name. Yet somewhere inside a stack of reorganized policies and revised corporate documents, I had become a person Serena did not need to consult. She folded her hands on Daniel's desk. "This is not punishment, May. It is a safeguard." "Against what?" "Against confusion during an emergency. Against conflicting instructions. Against liability. I told one worker to stop disturbing a fire scene. You countermanded the executive director in front of employees. You are the executive director because Daniel died." The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Serena's face changed, not dramatically. She simply went still. Yes, she said, he did. Silence settled between us. Grief contaminated everything. It altered tone, sharpened suspicion, and made cruelty feel justified for one reckless second. I shouldn't have said it that way, I told her. No, but you meant it. She stood and opened the office door. The restrictions begin immediately. I walked out carrying the insurance letter in one hand. By noon, Serena's new rules had reached every department. No staff member was to accept operational instructions from me without approval from the executive office. I could attend therapy sessions as an observer, visit public areas, and participate in scheduled donor events. I could not enter medication storage, equipment rooms, restricted barns, or administrative offices alone. My name appeared 7 times in the announcement. Not once did the message mention the closed sprinkler valve. The following Monday, I arrived before 8 for the weekly staff meeting. The conference room was empty, so I went to my old office. The lock would not turn. I tried again, pressing my shoulder against the door while I worked the key. A young woman from Serena's development team approached carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Oh," she said, "Mrs. Hollis, that key won't work anymore." "Why?" The office was reassigned. Through the narrow window, I saw what they had done. My metal filing cabinets were gone. The wall map showing every water line, shutoff, and hydrant on the property had been removed. 2 white sofas now faced a low glass table. A television displayed Ashgrove's new fundraising video on a silent loop. A gold plaque beside the door read, "Donor Experience Lounge." I turned back to the young woman. "Where are my files? Storage, I think you think?" Mr. Vale's crew moved everything over the weekend. Grant again, I found him beside the indoor arena directing 2 electricians. "You emptied my office." He continued speaking to them for several seconds before acknowledging me. "Serena approved the renovation." I asked where my files went. "Record storage. Which building?" He tapped something on his tablet. "Ask administration. I am asking the man who moved them." He looked up then, annoyance replacing indifference. "May I have 6 active work orders and an insurer breathing down my neck." "I don't track every box personally. You track the invoices." His mouth tightened. Before he could answer, Eli stepped out of the arena. My grandson had Daniel's height and Serena's gray eyes. At 23, he still believed silence could keep everyone safe. "Grandma," he said, "can we talk?" He led me outside to the rail overlooking the lower pasture. 2 therapy horses grazed near the fence, their winter coats thick against the wind. The air carried the smell of wet earth, hay, and smoke that had settled into my clothes days earlier. "Mom told me what happened," he said. "Which version?" He exhaled through his nose. "She's trying to keep Ashgrove open. So am I." "No, you're trying to keep it the way Dad left it." The accusation was not angry. That made it worse. "What do you think she's changing that Daniel would object to?" "Everything can't be personal." "It becomes personal when someone removes my keys." She said the insurer required it. "Did you read the policy?" "No, the recommendation came after Serena gave them information." "I want to know what information." Ellie rubbed the back of his neck. "Grandma, you've been different since Dad died." "So have you?" "I know." His eyes lowered toward the pasture. "Mom gets up every day and deals with payroll, donors, legal problems, and staff complaints. You walk into a fire scene and accuse Uncle Grant of destroying evidence." I said he was moving it. "You made it sound criminal, because it was improper." He looked at me then. "Can you admit there's even a small chance you're wrong?" A good investigator always leaves room for error. But I also knew that a manual valve did not nearly close itself, and a restoration contractor did not arrive before being called. "I can be wrong," I said. "That doesn't mean I am." Ellie's shoulders sagged. "Mom is scared you're going to tear apart what Dad built because you can't let him go." He walked back toward the arena before I found an answer that would not drive him farther away. That afternoon, I went to the records barn. My old office boxes had been stacked along the rear wall beneath Christmas decorations, broken jumps, faded event banners, and obsolete computer equipment. Dust already covered the lids, as though someone expected my life's work to disappear quietly beneath it. I opened each carton carefully: inspection reports, hydrant tests, evacuation diagrams, grant applications, Daniel's handwritten notes from the first veteran program. At last I found the carton marked Fire and Life Safety Field books inside, were 15 black notebooks arranged by year. There should have been 16. The most recent volume, the one containing every alarm test, sprinkler inspection, contractor visit, and safety complaint from the 12 months before the fire was missing. I stood in the records barn with the empty spaces in the carton staring back at me. The missing notebook covered the only year that mattered. I searched the surrounding boxes twice. I checked beneath old saddle pads, inside a cabinet of expired first aid supplies, and behind a stack of folding chairs. Nothing. When I returned to the administrative building, Serena's assistant told me the safety records had been digitized. "Where are the scans?" I asked. "In the compliance drive, give me access." She glanced toward Serena's closed office. "I'm not authorized." 20 minutes later, she returned with a printed packet. It contained polished monthly summaries with electronic approval lines. No handwritten observations, no inspection photographs, no notes about faulty alarms, delayed repairs, or unusual contractor visits. Someone had reduced a year of fieldwork to pages that said nothing. I took the packet home. That night, I covered my kitchen table with every document I could lawfully obtain. The county incident report, Ash Grove's insurance summary, Grant's invoices, photographs posted by staff, screenshots from the local news, and the weather archive for the morning of the fire. Investigators do not begin with theories. We begin with time. The first 911 call came at 4:43 a.m. The engine arrived at 4:51. Grant's invoice claimed his emergency crew reached Ash Grove at 5:06. Yet one photograph posted by a volunteer at 5:02 already showed a Vail restoration truck behind the west barn. Either Grant's employees could travel backward in time, or they had been on the property before the fire was reported. I wrote the discrepancy on a yellow legal pad, then I examined the photographs. The official report stated that the fire began behind a refrigerator in the tack room, spread upward through the wall cavity, and ignited the roof framing. That explanation should have produced the deepest damage near the outlet, with heat patterns widening toward the ceiling. But the wall behind the refrigerator was smoke-darkened, not deeply charred. The plastic casing had melted from outside heat, yet the metal compressor housing remained intact. The heaviest burning appeared 6 feet away near the feed passage door. More troubling, the lower section of the door frame had burned more severely than the upper section. Fire climbs unless fuel takes it downward. I enlarged a photograph on my tablet. Near the base of the frame was a pale patch surrounded by deep charring. Something had shielded the wood before being removed. A container perhaps, or a folded tarp. I did not write arson, not yet, I wrote. Possible low-level fuel package near passage door. At 2 in the morning, I found another inconsistency. Grant had billed Ash Grove for replacing water-damaged insulation after prolonged sprinkler discharge. The fire report said the sprinklers activated, but failed because of weak pressure. That was impossible. The outside temperature had been 26 degrees. Photographs taken after sunrise showed only a thin glaze of ice beneath 2 broken windows. If the system had discharged at full volume for 10 minutes, water would have covered the concrete passage and frozen in broad sheets. Instead, the floor appeared mostly dry. The system had not suffered weak pressure. It had received almost no water. By dawn, I had reconstructed a tentative sequence. Someone entered the west barn before 4:30, nearly closed the sprinkler valve, and started or encouraged a fire near the passage door. The refrigerator area later became the official origin because old wiring offered a convenient explanation. Grant's crew was already nearby, ready to remove debris before an independent investigator could study it. The pattern did not prove who had done it, but it showed that the official story did not fit the physical evidence. At 9, I drove to Ash Grove and requested the repair invoices. Serena met me in reception. "You've been asking staff for restricted records," she said. I asked for invoices paid by a nonprofit I helped create. The board created Ash Grove. The board did not dig the first post holes. Her smile was faint. "What exactly are you looking for?" "A reason Grant was here before the fire department finished laying hose." "He was not. There is a photograph, then the timestamp is wrong. Why was the sprinkler valve closed?" "It malfunctioned. Why did he bill us for water damage in areas that were not wet?" Serena's eyes sharpened. You have no authority to conduct a private investigation. I have every right to ask why Ashgrove paid for work that was not needed. She stepped closer. This fixation is becoming harmful. May, you are frightening employees, forcing Eli to choose between us, and undermining the people trying to keep this place financially stable. That last phrase stayed with me, financially stable. Until then, I had assumed the fire was about a contractor cutting corners or an inflated insurance claim. But Serena's fear was not centered on safety. It was centered on money. She handed me a one-page invoice summary. Grant's total charges exceeded $312,000. One line item listed full replacement of the north tack wall. The north wall had never burned. Where is Juniper's casualty documentation? I asked. With the insurer, I want the identification record. You are not entitled to veterinary files. I helped buy that mare, and Ashgrove owned her. There it was again, the legal distinction she used whenever history became inconvenient. I left before anger cost me more ground. Outside, staff moved between barns carrying feed buckets and blankets. As I passed the feed room, someone caught my sleeve. Tasha Green stood between the building and a row of hay pallets. Her eyes moved toward the security camera above the door. "Don't stop," she whispered. We walked side by side toward the lower barn. "I heard what you asked Serena," she said. "About Juniper, what about her?" The morning after the fire, Grant told us not to discuss the horses. He said the insurer needed one version from one person. That can happen after a loss. This was different. She pressed something small into my hand. It was a chestnut-colored braid of horsehair tied with blue thread. "I cut that from Juniper's tail 2 weeks after the fire," she said. At a farm outside Georgetown, I stopped walking. Tasha finally looked at me. "Mrs. Hollis, I don't think Juniper died." I closed my fingers around the braid of chestnut hair. "Tell me exactly what you saw." Tasha glanced toward the lower barn. 2 volunteers were leading a gray gelding through the aisle, close enough that she waited until they passed. "Grant sent me to Briar Run Farm 12 days after the fire," she said. He said Ashgrove had leased 2 stalls there for horses recovering from smoke exposure. Why were they moved off-site? He said the west barn ventilation system was contaminated. Which horses? Maribel and a bay gelding named Fox. Neither animal had been housed near the fire. Tasha continued walking. When I got there, I heard a mare kicking the back wall of an isolation stall. The door had no nameplate. I looked through the bars, and you believed it was Juniper. I knew it was. Belief and knowledge are not the same thing, especially when accusations carry criminal consequences. What made you certain? She has a white patch inside her left ear. Not on the outside where people usually notice. Daniel used to joke that it looked like a little map of Kentucky. I remembered it. Juniper also dragged her right hind toe when she became anxious, the result of an old injury. She hated blue plastic buckets and would pin her ears at anyone wearing strong citrus perfume. Those details were more persuasive than the hair in my hand, but they were not yet proof. Did you scan her microchip? No, the stall had a padlock. Did you take photographs? 1. Tasha removed her phone and opened an image. The photograph had been taken through metal bars. It showed part of a chestnut face, one eye, and the curve of a white blaze. The image was dark and slightly blurred. A person who knew Juniper might recognize her. A lawyer would call it inconclusive. Did anyone see you? A man came into the aisle. He said the mare belonged to a private client and told me to leave. Who was he? I don't know, but one of Grant's trucks was parked behind the barn. Why wait until now to tell me? Her mouth tightened. Because I need this job. My mother lives with me, and her medication costs more every month. Serena told us anyone spreading rumors about the fire would be terminated for violating the insurance investigation. Fear does not always make people dishonest. Sometimes it makes them late. Send me the photograph. I said. Tasha shook her head immediately. I can show it to you. I can't be involved. You already are. Her eyes hardened. That is easy for you to say. Your name is on the gate. Mine is on a weekly paycheck. She walked away before I could apologize. I should have slowed down. I should have verified the farm, found the mare, checked the microchip, and documented every step. That was what I would have demanded from a young investigator standing in my old office. Instead, grief and anger convinced me that one blurred photograph was enough. By noon, I was inside Serena's office. She sat with Grant and 2 members of Ashgrove's board. Martin Phelps, a retired orthopedic surgeon, and Denise Park, our treasurer. Denise had spent years auditing charitable organizations for the state. If anyone in that room understood the seriousness of a false insurance claim, it was her. I placed the photograph on the desk. Juniper is alive. Grant leaned back in his chair. Serena did not touch the phone. Where did you get this? That is not the important question. It is if a staff member violated confidentiality. A Mayor Ashgrove reported dead was seen at Briar Run Farm after the fire. Grant picked up the phone and enlarged the image. This could be any chestnut horse in Kentucky. She has Juniper's blaze. Half the quarter horses in this county have a blaze. She was transported there in one of your trucks. According to whom? I looked at him. The investigator in me knew better than to expose a frightened witness before securing corroboration. The mother in me wanted to wipe the smugness from his face. I chose poorly. Tasha Green. Serena's expression changed by less than an inch. That was enough. She opened a drawer and removed a thick file. We anticipated this, she said. Inside were photographs of a burned animal covered beneath a recovery tarp, a veterinary casualty statement, a carcass removal receipt, and an insurance identification form bearing Juniper's registered number. Dr. Raymond Klein, the veterinarian Serena had hired after Daniel's death, had signed the casualty certificate. Denise adjusted her glasses. The microchip was confirmed. Serena turned to the relevant page. Scanned at the scene, the recorded number matched Juniper's file. Grant placed the blurred photograph beside the official documents. This is what happens when someone begins with a conclusion, he said. She finds a horse with similar markings and invents a conspiracy. I ignored him. Where are the scanner logs? Serena tapped the report. Attached, a typed number is not a device log. Martin Phelps shifted uncomfortably. May, what exactly are you alleging? That the fire scene was compromised. The sprinkler was disabled. Grant arrived before he was supposedly called, and Juniper may have been removed before the fire. The room went silent. Denise studied me with the guarded expression auditors use when deciding whether someone is a witness or a liability. Do you possess evidence connecting Serena or Grant to an intentional fire? She asked. Not yet evidence that the casualty report was falsified. I have a photograph and a witness. Of a horse behind a locked door. I know what Juniper looks like. Serena folded her hands. This is precisely what I warned the board about. She spoke softly, without anger. May's grief has become attached to the fire. First she accused Grant of destroying evidence. Now she believes a dead horse is being hidden at another farm. Yesterday she told staff members that our financial records might be fraudulent. I asked why we paid for an unburned wall. Martin looked toward Denise. Was that invoice reviewed? Denise answered too quickly. All emergency payments were approved. I noticed the speed of her response, but I was too angry to examine it. Serena pushed a second folder across the desk. It contained a written resolution temporarily suspending me from all operational areas, pending a wellness and governance review. 3 board members had already signed. Denise's signature appeared last. You prepared this before I arrived. I said, we prepared it after repeated disruptions, Serena replied. And Tasha, she will be interviewed. The meeting ended with my access reduced to public events by invitation only. As I stood to leave, Serena gathered the fire documents. You said the valve had been closed before the alarm came in at 4:37, she said. That is impossible to prove. I stopped at the door. The first 911 call had been logged at 4:43. The county report did not record when the alarm panel first activated. That time existed only in my missing field notebook and the original system memory. Yet Serena had just said 4:37. She knew the exact minute the alarm began, and no one had told her I knew it. Serena knew the alarm had activated at 4:37. I carried that fact out of her office like a live coal. The time had never appeared in the county report. It was not included in the insurer's summary, and the fire captain had not mentioned it during his brief inspection. I had recorded it from the original alarm display before Grant's workers disconnected the panel. That entry was inside my missing field notebook. Serena either had the notebook, had seen the system memory before it was erased, or had been told the activation time by someone present before the 911 call. Any of those possibilities mattered. None of them would help me if I continued behaving like the angry, grieving founder she had described to the board. By the time I reached my truck, I understood my mistake. I had approached the investigation as though I still possessed institutional authority. I did not. Serena controlled the records, the staff, the board agenda, the insurance communication, and the story everyone had been told about me. Worse, I had given her Tasha's name. An investigator who exposes a witness before protecting her is not acting from discipline. She is acting from pride. I sat behind the wheel for nearly 20 minutes, staring through the windshield at Daniel's name carved into the stone entrance. Then I made a decision that cost me more than any accusation had. I would apologize, not because Serena was right, because I needed her to believe she had won. The next morning, I called her office and requested 10 minutes. Her assistant scheduled me for 4 o'clock, as though I were an outside vendor. Serena received me with Grant seated beside the window. He did not bother pretending the meeting was private. I wore the small hearing aids I had purchased 3 years earlier and rarely used. My hearing was still good enough for normal conversation, but years around engines, alarms, and collapsing structures had left me with difficulty separating voices in crowded rooms. That weakness was real. I intended to make it look worse. I owe both of you an apology. I said. Grant's eyebrows rose. Serena remained cautious. For what? For allowing my suspicions to get ahead of the evidence. I looked down at my hands. I spent most of my career entering places after something terrible happened. I learned to distrust easy explanations. Since Daniel died, I may have forgotten that not every irregularity is a crime. The words scraped on the way out. Serena's posture softened by degrees. You have been under enormous strain. She said. I know. Grant crossed one ankle over his knee, and the allegations about my company. I should not have made them publicly. That isn't the same as saying they were false. I turned my head slightly, as if I had not heard him. What was that? He repeated himself louder. I touched the hearing aid behind my right ear and frowned. Battery's been unreliable. The glance he exchanged with Serena lasted less than a second. It was enough. I am saying, I continued, that I do not have evidence strong enough to justify what I said. Serena came around the desk. That is all we ever wanted you to recognize. She placed one hand on my shoulder. Her touch was warm, controlled, and almost maternal. We are not trying to remove you from Ashgrove, May. We are trying to protect your place in its history. History. A place where troublesome founders could be honored without being obeyed. I let my shoulders sink. I don't want Eli caught between us. He shouldn't be. I also don't want Daniel remembered through a public fight. Serena nodded. We have been discussing a founder emeritus position. Ceremonial but meaningful. You could attend selected events, speak with donors, and help preserve Daniel's story. Grant looked toward the window to hide his satisfaction. I pretended not to notice. I would like that, I said. Serena embraced me before I left. Her relief was genuine. That was how I knew the performance had worked. Over the next 2 weeks, I became easier to manage. I asked people to repeat simple questions. I turned my head toward the wrong speaker during meetings. I removed one hearing aid in the dining hall and complained that every voice sounded muffled. When Serena discussed finances near me, I stared politely and responded half a beat too late. When Grant spoke with contractors in the parking lot, he no longer lowered his voice. People are rarely careful around someone they consider irrelevant. I learned that Vale Restoration had received 3 additional contracts after the fire. One involved replacing electrical conduit in the east barn, though our maintenance supervisor insisted no damage had occurred there. Another covered biohazard disposal from the west pasture, where no contaminated material had been stored. I did not challenge the invoices. I wrote the details in a new notebook and kept it inside the locked toolbox beneath my truck seat. Tasha avoided me completely. 3 days after our confrontation, her name disappeared from the day schedule and reappeared on overnight stable duty. Serena had not fired her. That would have looked retaliatory. Instead, she isolated her. I wanted to apologize, but approaching her too quickly would confirm that we were working together. So I waited. The night activity began on a Thursday. I had stayed late after a veterans program and was walking toward my truck when one of Grant's trailers entered through the service gate. Its headlights were off until it passed the main office. The driver parked behind the records barn. Two men unloaded empty transport partitions, carried them inside, and emerged 40 minutes later with several sealed document cartons. The next week, the same trailer returned shortly after midnight. Then again 3 nights later. Each visit occurred when Tasha was assigned to the lower barns, and the security supervisor was scheduled elsewhere. I began parking near the county road and watching through compact field binoculars. I noted license plates, arrival times, weather, personnel, and cargo. On the 4th night, Grant himself arrived. He met the driver beside the trailer and handed him an envelope. Their voices did not carry far enough for me to distinguish the words, but Grant pointed toward the old quarantine pasture, then made a slicing motion across his throat. The trailer left through the rear gate. I waited until both vehicles disappeared before approaching the loading area. Fresh tire impressions cut through the damp soil. One set was unusually deep, suggesting the trailer had been heavier when it departed. I followed the tracks toward the pasture fence. Near the gate, the mud had been churned by hooves. A few strands of chestnut hair clung to a splintered post. I crouched and examined the ground with my flashlight. Something metallic reflected beneath the trailer rut. I worked it free with 2 fingers. It was a bent brass halter plate packed with mud and scarred along one edge. I wiped it against my sleeve until the stamped characters emerged. Juniper, AER 1174. The same mare Serena had certified as dead had been standing on Ashgrove property less than an hour earlier. And Grant had just moved her somewhere else. I carried the brass plate home, inside an evidence envelope left over from my years with the state. I did not wash or straighten it. Mud, scratches, and trace material could matter later. I photographed it beside a ruler, recorded where and when I found it, then sealed the envelope and signed across the flap. Old habits had returned. By sunrise, I had 2 facts Serena could not dismiss easily. Juniper's plate had been found beside fresh hoofprints, and Grant's trailer had left Ashgrove, carrying an animal heavy enough to deepen its tire tracks. But neither fact told me where he had taken her. Tasha did. She approached me 3 nights later in the public viewing gallery, above the indoor arena. Below us, volunteers swept the footing after a therapy session. She remained standing, as though sitting beside me might be seen as allegiance. I followed the trailer once, she said. When? The night before Serena moved me to overnights. Why didn't you tell me? Because the last time I told you something, you gave my name to Serena. The words were deserved. I was careless, I said. I won't do it again. The trailer went north on Ironworks Pike, then cut west past the old quarry. I lost it near a private boarding place called Hollow Creek. No sign out front, just a black gate and a mailbox with the number 48. Did you enter the property? No, good. She looked surprised. An investigation is often knowing what not to do. Tasha glanced toward the stairwell. One of the grooms there knows my cousin, she said. A chestnut mare arrived after midnight under the name Willow. The mare had no transfer papers. Can she identify who delivered her? She won't talk officially. She's undocumented and afraid of losing her job. That fear closed one path, but not all of them. I drove past Hollow Creek the next afternoon, without slowing. From the county road, I could see 3 barn roofs behind a high black fence. A security camera faced the entrance. Grant had chosen the place because visitors would be noticed. I searched public business registrations instead. Hollow Creek Boarding LLC belonged to Melinda Sorrell. Its mailing address matched a Lexington office suite shared by 6 companies. One was Vale Agricultural Logistics. Grant's name did not appear on Hollow Creek's ownership papers. It did not need to. The shared address established a relationship worth examining. The first outside confirmation came from someone I had never met. Priya Desai, a veterinary technician at Bluegrass Equine Clinic, called my home 2 days later and asked whether I had once owned a mare named Juniper. Ashgrove owned her, I said. Why? I may be mistaken. What did you see? A chestnut mare came in last month under the name Willow. She needed treatment for an infected hawk. When I scanned her, the number was close to 1 in an old Ashgrove record. Close how? I shouldn't discuss a client's file. You called me. I recognized the scar, she said. Dr. Ortega repaired a tendon near that hawk 4 years ago. I assisted. The mare has a small stainless anchor from the surgery. The serial number should still be in the imaging record. Who brought Willow in? A man from Hollow Creek, but the invoice was paid by Vale Agricultural Logistics. I asked Priya not to copy records or access anything she was not authorized to view. Instead, I requested the name of the veterinarian who had treated Juniper. Dr. Luis Ortega had since opened a small practice south of Versailles. He remembered her immediately. She hated citrus hand cleaner, he said, tried to bite my assistant whenever she used it. What would you need to identify her conclusively? A lawful examination, the chip number, dental comparison, and imaging of the repair. The implant serial would be highly persuasive. Would you examine a horse without the listed owner's permission? No. His answer was firm. I respected him for it. If an insurer or law enforcement agency made a proper request, then I would cooperate. He leaned back. May, what is this? Possibly insurance fraud, possibly theft, possibly is carrying a great deal of weight. It has to until the evidence catches up. I left without records, but with an independent expert who could verify Juniper if I found a lawful way to bring the mare before him. The financial trail led me to Denise Park. Her electronic approval appeared on every emergency payment to Grant's companies. If the invoices were false, Denise had either failed badly or participated. We met at a crowded bakery near the university. I placed copies of the public business filings between us. Hollow Creek shares an address with Grant's logistics company, I said. Vale Agricultural Logistics paid for veterinary care on a mare Ashgrove declared dead. Denise did not touch the papers. How did you obtain medical billing information? A clinic employee named the payer. I told her not to send records. Her voice remained guarded. What do you want? The original payment authorizations. You are no longer permitted to review Ashgrove finances. Your approval is on Grant's invoices. My electronic credentials are. The distinction caught my attention. Are you saying you didn't approve them? I'm saying Serena's office uploads the supporting documents. The management system allows batch processing. I review summary totals. That is not an audit. I know. Shame flickered across her face, followed by anger. I spent 40 years telling boards that good intentions do not excuse weak controls. If these records are compromised, my name will be attached to every failure. And if you remain silent, it will deserve to be. Denise stared at me. Then she opened her portfolio and removed a tablet. I downloaded the herd insurance register before Serena removed my administrator access. She said, "Show me Juniper's known chip number." I recited it from memory. Denise entered the digits and opened a second file containing Willow's clinic reference. The numbers appeared side by side. Juniper's registered microchip ended in 7, Willow's ended in 1. Every other digit was identical. Someone had not created a new identity. They had changed a single number and trusted no one would look closely enough to notice. Denise enlarged the 2 microchip numbers until they filled the tablet screen. Changing 1 digit could be dismissed as clerical error, she said. Not when the false number belongs to a living horse declared dead. We still cannot prove Willow is Juniper. Dr. Ortega can, if we obtain lawful access to the mare. Denise closed the files and looked around the bakery. No one appeared interested in 2 older women speaking quietly over untouched coffee, but caution had become necessary. There is something else, she said. Ashgrove's board has an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. What emergency? The insurer intends to decline renewal. The current policy expired in 30 days. Without liability and property coverage, Ashgrove could not operate its therapy programs, host volunteers, or satisfy the terms of its agricultural loan. The farm's lender required continuous insurance as a condition of financing. Why didn't Serena tell me? She has not told most of the board. Denise turned the tablet toward me again. An email from the carrier cited repeated casualty losses, unresolved fire protection deficiencies, and incomplete compliance documentation. 3 claims had been filed during the previous 18 months. The West Tackroom fire, a trailer accident involving 2 rescue horses, and a supposed lightning strike that damaged electrical equipment in the rehabilitation barn. I remembered the storm named in the 3rd claim. It had passed 12 miles north of Ashgrove. The carrier is giving us 30 days to replace the coverage, Denise said. If we fail, Bluegrass Community Bank can declare a technical default. How much remains on the loan? Just under $2 million. Ashgrove owned valuable land but kept little unrestricted cash. Donations arrived with conditions. Grants paid for programs, staff, veterinary care, and participant services. They could not simply be redirected to satisfy a lender. A default would not close the farm overnight, but it would hand Serena the crisis she needed. She has a buyer, I said. Denise looked at me sharply. How do you know? I don't, not yet, but no executive director allows an insurance deadline to reach 30 days, unless she has already chosen the solution she wants the board to accept. The next morning, I was not invited to the emergency meeting. I attended anyway. The gathering took place inside Daniel's old office, where Serena sat at the head of the conference table. Grant occupied a chair against the wall, though he was neither an officer nor a board member. When I entered, conversation stopped. Serena removed her glasses. May, this is a closed executive session. I founded the organization, whose future you are discussing. You are founder emeritus. That title did not exist until you invented it. Martin Phelps shifted in his chair. Two newer board members avoided my eyes. Denise kept her expression neutral. Serena could have ordered me removed. Instead, she made a calculation. Let her stay, she said. Perhaps hearing the facts will help her understand why difficult decisions are necessary. A presentation appeared on the wall screen. The first slides described Ashgrove's financial pressure. Rising veterinary costs, declining unrestricted donations, repair expenses, insurance losses, and the lender's default provisions. The figures were alarming. They were also curated. Grant's restoration payments were grouped under unavoidable emergency expenses. Insurance reimbursements were excluded from the revenue graph because Serena called them non-recurring. Restricted donations were presented as unavailable without explaining who had restricted them or why. Then came the proposal. A development company named Halcyon Ridge Partners had offered to purchase 120 acres of Ashgrove's land. The indoor arena, administrative offices, and 2 barns would be demolished. A smaller therapy center would operate on the remaining acreage under a long-term service agreement. Serena called it preservation through transformation. I called it burial with a gift ribbon. How much? I asked. $14 million, she replied. Several board members murmured. The price sounded generous until Serena displayed the map. Halcyon Ridge would receive the highway frontage, the main water connection, and every parcel suitable for commercial construction. Ashgrove would retain the low pasture, flood-prone acreage, and older barns requiring the most maintenance. What is Halcyon building? Denise asked. A mixed-use equestrian community, luxury housing, I said. Serena continued as though I had not spoken. The proceeds would eliminate debt, establish an operating reserve, and guarantee Daniel's mission for another generation. Who introduced the buyer? Grant's business network identified them. Grant met my gaze without blinking. Of course he had. The board scheduled a preliminary vote for the following week. Serena wanted authority to negotiate final terms before the insurance deadline forced the lender's hand. When the meeting ended, Eli waited outside. You weren't supposed to be in there, he said. Neither was your uncle. He's handling the repairs. He's also bringing the buyer. Eli glanced toward the closed door. Mom is trying to save the farm by selling most of it. What would you do instead? Find out why a healthy organization suddenly has no insurance, no cash, and millions in emergency expenses. His expression hardened. You think everything leads back to Mom. I think every road I follow reaches either her office or Grant's company. That isn't proof. No, but it is a map. He turned away. I caught his wrist gently. Ellie, did you ever transport horses to Hollow Creek? His eyes flicked back to mine. No. Did you sign transfer forms after the fire? I signed dozens of things. We were moving animals, ordering feed, dealing with reporters. Mom needed help. What kind of forms? I don't remember. Try. He pulled his arm free. This is what she means. You ask questions like everyone is under investigation. I watched him leave, troubled less by his anger than by the hesitation before his answer. That afternoon, Denise gave me access to a backup folder she had copied before Serena changed her permissions. We reviewed casualty claims, vendor payments, and animal movement records in the back room of her house. Near sunset, I found a scanned transport manifest dated 3 days after the West Barn fire. 4 horses were listed for emergency relocation. 2 names were familiar. The third entry was hidden beneath a black redaction bar. The fourth identified a chestnut mare as Willow. At the bottom, under Authorized Ashgrove Representative, was Eli's signature. Not a digital approval, not a copied initials stamp, his full handwritten name. My grandson had signed the document that helped turn Juniper into a different horse. I stared at Eli's signature until the letters stopped looking like his name. The manifest had been scanned in color. Blue ink pressed harder at the beginning of the H, then faded near the final S. I had watched him sign birthday cards, veterinary school applications, and the paperwork for his first truck. There was no mistaking his hand. Denise sat across from me at her dining table. "You need to consider the possibility that he knew," she said. "He signed a transport form for a horse listed under a false name. That does not prove he knew the name was false." Denise closed the laptop. "You are protecting him, yes." The answer surprised neither of us. Protecting someone and absolving them are not the same thing. I had spent years telling families that facts did not become kinder because we loved the people involved. Yet with Eli, I wanted one explanation that allowed him to remain Daniel's decent son. I called him that evening. He agreed to meet at a roadside diner west of town, far from Ashgrove. He arrived wearing his clinic scrubs and sat opposite me without ordering food. I placed a printed copy of the manifest between us. His eyes dropped to the signature. "Where did you get this?" "Is it yours?" He read the page twice. "Yes. Did you know Willow was Juniper?" "No. Why did you authorize the transfer?" "I didn't authorize a specific horse." "Your name appears beneath 4. His fingers pressed against the paper. "Mom brought me a stack of forms after the fire. Some were incomplete. She said animals had to be moved before the insurer would release emergency funds." "You signed blank documents." "Partially blank. There is no safe version of that. I know that now." His shame looked real. So did his fear. "Did you ever see Juniper after the fire?" I asked. "No. Did Serena tell you she died?" "Everyone said she died." "Everyone meaning your mother and Grant." His jaw tightened. "You are trying to turn me against her." "I am trying to determine whether your signature was used to conceal a living animal." "She would not do that. You signed a form you did not read because she asked. That is already something she should not have done." He pushed the document back toward me. "Mom was drowning after Dad died. She had donors calling, staff panicking, insurance adjusters demanding records. I was trying to help. So was I. You were accusing everyone because someone closed the sprinkler valve." His gaze shifted toward the window. There it was again. Not disbelief, but avoidance. "What do you know about the valve?" I asked. "Nothing." That answer came too quickly. He stood. "I knew meeting you was a mistake." "Ellie." He stopped but did not turn. "Did Serena ask you to sign anything else that was incomplete?" For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he walked out. I remained in the booth with the unsigned restaurant check, the manifest, and the knowledge that my grandson was hiding at least one more fact. Pushing him harder would send him straight to Serena. So I did the opposite. I surrendered. 3 days later, Serena gathered the staff in the indoor arena for what she called a unity meeting. I had asked for the opportunity to speak. Nearly 40 employees and volunteers stood along the rail. Ellie remained near the rear doors. Tasha watched from the upper gallery, her face unreadable. Serena introduced me with gracious concern. "May has something she would like to share as we move Ashgrove forward together." I stepped into the center of the arena, wearing both hearing aids and carrying no notes. "I owe many of you an apology," I said. The room went quiet. "Since Daniel's death, I have confused vigilance with certainty. I raised concerns about the fire, the repairs in Juniper without sufficient evidence. In doing so, I created fear and placed good people under suspicion." Grant stood beside Serena, with his hands folded. I looked directly at him. I should have handled my questions privately. It was not an admission that he was innocent, but it was close enough for the people listening. I also resisted changes because they did not look like the Ashgrove Daniel and I built. That was pride. The work matters more than my authority. Serena lowered her eyes modestly. "I have therefore accepted the board's invitation to serve as founder emeritus. I will step away from operations and support whatever responsible plan preserves Daniel's mission." Polite applause spread through the arena. Ellie did not clap. Serena embraced me in front of everyone. "You have no idea what this means to us," she whispered. I did. It meant she believed I was no longer dangerous. Within a week, my restrictions softened. I was invited to donor lunches, photographed beside therapy horses, and asked to record a video endorsing Ashgrove's next chapter. Serena began discussing the land sale within my hearing because she assumed I could not follow complex conversations. Grant became even less careful. One afternoon, as I sat outside Daniel's office waiting to film a tribute message, I heard him speaking through the partly open door. "Once she endorses the transition, the old guard will stop fighting," he said. Serena answered, "The gala vote makes it irreversible." "What about the records, handled after the speeches?" A chair moved, and their voices dropped. I tilted my head and adjusted my hearing aid as Serena's assistant passed, performing confusion until she disappeared around the corner. That evening, I returned to the records barn for a scheduled photograph with several longtime volunteers. While the photographer changed batteries, I noticed a white work order clipped to the rear bulletin board. The header carried the Vale Restoration logo, Archive Barn, complete rental clearance. The work was scheduled for Founders Night, beginning at 8:30 p., while every board member, donor, and employee would be inside the arena. The instructions authorized removal of all paper files, veterinary ledgers, retired computer drives, and obsolete historical materials before demolition review. At the bottom, Serena had written one sentence by hand: "Nothing is to remain by morning." I photographed the work order while the photographer was still changing batteries. Then I returned the page to the bulletin board, exactly as I had found it. "Nothing is to remain by morning." Those words told me the archive clearance was not routine housekeeping. Serena wanted the records gone while the entire organization was distracted by the gala. The question was whether she intended to remove them or destroy them. I spent the rest of the photo session smiling beside longtime volunteers while a chestnut gelding nosed my coat pocket for treats. Serena stood nearby, describing Ashgrove's future to the photographer. Every few minutes, she placed a supportive hand on my shoulder. To anyone watching, we looked reconciled. That night, I called Denise from a prepaid phone and read her the work order. "We need to preserve the records now," she said. "If we remove them without authority, Serena will accuse us of theft. Then we copy them. She changed your system access. She changed my administrator access. She did not revoke my legal duties as treasurer." Denise had spent most of her career telling nonprofit boards that fiduciary responsibility was not ceremonial. Now she finally sounded prepared to follow her own advice. Under Ashgrove's bylaws, the treasurer had the right to review banking records, contracts, and supporting documentation. Serena could restrict convenience, not responsibility. The next morning, Denise submitted a formal written request for complete financial access, citing the pending land transaction and insurance crisis. She copied every board member and Ashgrove's outside accountant. Serena responded within 20 minutes. She welcomed the review. That confidence disturbed me. Either she believed the records were clean, or she believed the evidence had already been removed. Denise arranged to meet the outside accountant at his office rather than at Ashgrove. Because the gala vote involved a major asset sale, he agreed to restore her read-only access to the accounting backups maintained on his firm's server. I joined them as an advisor to the founder emeritus, a title Serena had created to neutralize me, and which Denise now used to put me in the room. The accountant, a nervous man named Carl Mercer, looked at me twice before closing the door. "Mrs. Hollis," he said, "I was told you had stepped away from operations." "I stepped away from authority, not from eyesight." Denise opened the vendor ledger. We began with Grant's companies. Vale Restoration Services had received more than $1 million from Ashgrove in 18 months. Some payments were tied to visible work. Others went to subcontractors with names so ordinary they almost disappeared on the page. Blue Arc Electrical, Commonwealth Hauling, Fieldstone Environmental, Red River Emergency Supply. Denise selected Blue Arc. Its mailing address was a private mailbox in Louisville. Its tax identification records listed a manager named Aaron Vale. "Vale," I said, with an I. Carl replied, "Grant's surname is Vale." Carl shrugged. "Names resemble each other. People committing fraud often think spelling is disguise." Denise searched corporate registrations. Aaron Vale did not exist in the state licensing database. The phone number on Blue Ark's invoices forwarded to an answering service used by 3 other companies. Commonwealth Hauling shared the same bank. Fieldstone Environmental had been incorporated by Grant's former employee. Red River Emergency Supply listed its registered agent as Melinda Sorrell, the owner of Hollow Creek Boarding. The companies were not independent contractors. They were branches of the same tree. We traced the first series of payments. Ashgrove would pay Vale Restoration for emergency work. Vale would subcontract a portion to Blue Ark or Fieldstone. Those companies then transferred money into an account belonging to an entity called Sterling Rhine Equestrian Events. Who owns Sterling Rhine? I asked. Carl hesitated. It is not listed as an Ashgrove-related party. That was not my question. Denise pulled the incorporation record. Serena owned 51%. Grant owned 49%. Sterling Rhine had been formed 2 years earlier to produce luxury horse exhibitions, private auctions, and destination riding weekends for wealthy clients. Its promotional materials showed chandeliers hanging inside temporary barns, champagne tents beside polo fields, and imported horses wearing jeweled bridles. The venture had collapsed after 3 events. Vendors sued, deposits were refunded, a hotel filed a collection action, yet money from Ashgrove's emergency contracts had continued flowing into Sterling Rhine long after the business stopped operating. Serena had not been rescuing Ashgrove from financial failure. She had been using Ashgrove to rescue herself. Denise sat motionless, one hand covering her mouth. My approvals are on these payments, summary approvals, I said. I should have opened every invoice. Yes, she lowered her hand. I did not soften the answer. Guilt that remains vague becomes self-pity. Denise needed to understand exactly where she had failed if she was going to help repair it. Carl opened the restricted donation accounts. The numbers were worse. After the West Barn fire, donors contributed nearly $400,000 for animal care, safety improvements, and rebuilding. Serena had publicly claimed those funds could not prevent the land sale because they were restricted. She was partly correct, they had been restricted. Then she had altered the expense descriptions. A payment for temporary equine housing went to Hollow Creek. A charge for specialized medical transport went to Vale Agricultural Logistics. A large withdrawal marked Fire Suppression Modernization was transferred through Blue Ark and ended in Sterling Rhine's account 3 days before a court deadline. That money had never protected horses, repaired barns, or improved safety. It had paid Serena's private debts. Denise leaned toward the screen. Go back to the development proposal. Carl opened the due diligence folder for Halcyon Ridge Partners. Buried beneath maps and environmental studies was a consulting agreement between Halcyon and another company, Sable Creek Advisory. Sable Creek would receive a success fee of $600,000 if the Ashgrove sale closed. Its sole member was a Delaware holding company. Denise searched the banking disclosures. The authorized signer was Serena Hollis. Selling the farm would not merely conceal the missing money. It would pay her again. I felt something inside me become quiet. Until that moment, a part of me had still hoped Serena was a frightened widow who had made one desperate decision and then committed more wrongs to hide it. But this was not panic, it was architecture. She had weakened Ashgrove, redirected its money, inflated its losses, compromised its insurance, and positioned herself to profit from the cure to the crisis she created. How far back does it go? I asked. Carl opened the earliest Sterling Rhine transfers. The first Ashgrove payment had occurred 14 months before Daniel died. Denise whispered. He was alive when this started. My son had worked beside Serena while she siphoned money from the mission he believed they shared. We continued searching until evening. Near the bottom of Sterling Rhine's recovered project calendar, Carl found an entry that had been deleted but remained in the server backup. It was scheduled for Founders Night at 9:40 p.m. The description contained only 4 words. Ashgrove final loss confirmed. Ashgrove final loss confirmed. The words remained on Carl Mercer's screen while the office windows darkened around us. Denise read the calendar entry again. Final loss could mean financial loss, she said. It could, I replied. Neither of us believed it. The entry was scheduled for 9:40 on Founders Night. The same evening, Grant's crew planned to clear every physical record from the archive barn. Serena expected the board to approve the land transaction before then. Whatever final loss meant, it was supposed to occur after she had secured authority and while hundreds of people were gathered elsewhere. We could not wait for the gala to discover whether we were right. Over the next 4 days, we built the case in layers. Denise handled the financial records. She exported vendor ledgers, bank transfers, contractor registrations, and restricted donation reports through Ashgrove's outside accountant. Every file was preserved with its original metadata and stored in 3 locations. Tasha reconstructed animal movements from stable schedules, feed orders, medication logs, and her own memory of which horses occupied which stalls. Dr. Ortega retrieved Juniper's lawful historical records from his former practice. They included dental images, radiographs of the repaired hock, and the serial number of the surgical anchor inside her leg. I concentrated on the fires. The alarm company still maintained remote diagnostic backups, though Serena appeared not to know it. Denise, acting as treasurer, requested the records as part of the insurance review. The West Barn log showed that the sprinkler control tamper switch had been disabled at 4:11 a.m. The smoke detector activated at 4:37. The 911 call came 6 minutes later. At 4:39, someone used an administrator code to silence the local supervisory alarm without restoring water pressure. That code belonged to Vale Restoration Services. Grant had not merely arrived early. Someone using his credentials had been interacting with the system while the barn was burning. We met in the private conference room of a Lexington law office belonging to Denise's former colleague. The room had no connection to Ashgrove, and every person present had a legitimate reason to examine the evidence. Dr. Ortega spread Juniper's medical images across the table. Tasha sat near the door, still wearing her night shift jacket. Denise arranged the financial charts in careful rows. Across from us was Evelyn Shaw, a senior investigator from Ashgrove's insurance carrier. Evelyn was in her late 50s, with silver-streaked hair and the weary expression of someone who had heard every imaginable version of accidental loss. She studied the material without interrupting. When we finished, she tapped Juniper's original chip record. "You do not currently possess the horse." "No," I said. "You have not personally scanned the animal seen at Hollow Creek." "No. The clinic employee who noticed the altered number will not release confidential treatment records without authorization." "Correct, and the photograph taken by Ms. Green does not establish identity." Tasha lowered her eyes. Evelyn turned toward the alarm logs. "This is stronger. It supports intentional interference with the suppression system. It does not identify who entered the code. It was assigned to Grant's company," I said. "Credentials can be shared, stolen, or left active." "You think this is coincidence?" "I think suspicion and proof have different jobs." I had said the same thing to young investigators for decades. It did not become less frustrating when directed at me. Evelyn examined the same thing to young investigators, the financial transfers next. "These payments justify a formal fraud review," she said. "But if I accuse the executive director before securing direct evidence, she will lock down the organization, remove the horse, and argue that unrelated accounting misconduct has been combined with a disputed casualty claim." "What would be enough?" Denise asked. "A current scan of the living mare performed with lawful access, a veterinary comparison, or a fresh statement from Serena certifying the casualty information after being given a clear opportunity to review it." "She has already signed the original claim," I said. 6 months ago, she can say she relied on Grant, Dr. Klein, or inaccurate emergency records. She can call herself negligent instead of fraudulent. She knew the alarm time. That proves knowledge of the incident, not knowledge that the mare survived. Evelyn leaned back. "People imagine fraud cases are won by revealing one shocking fact. They are usually won by closing every reasonable exit." Serena still had exits. She could blame Grant for the fire, the veterinarian for the false casualty certificate, Eli for the transport form, Denise for weak controls, and Grief for her own failure to notice. We needed her to affirm the lie again when the truth was available to her. Dr. Ortega removed his glasses. "If the mare is Juniper, I can identify her with a high degree of certainty. The chip alone is useful, but the implant serial and dental profile would make substitution almost impossible. Can we lawfully obtain her? I asked Evelyn, not by entering private property or taking her from the listed custodian. We need voluntary cooperation, a court order or the custodian to bring her forward. Tasha finally spoke. The woman at Hollow Creek may not own her. Everyone turned. My cousin heard they moved Willow again, she said. A family near Frankfurt has her now. They were told she was an abandoned rescue and agreed to foster her. Do you know their name? I asked. Not yet. It was progress, but not enough. Evelyn gathered her notes. I will open a confidential review. I can preserve the carrier's internal records and monitor any new claim activity. But I cannot stop the sale based solely on what is here. What if Serena is required to perform a complete inventory? Denise asked. She will manipulate it, only if she controls the process. Denise turned her laptop around. That morning, a regional charitable foundation had contacted Ashgrove about the insurance crisis. The foundation funded animal-assisted recovery programs and had previously supported Daniel's work. It was prepared to offer emergency coverage assistance and a substantial stabilization grant enough to remove the immediate pressure to sell the land. Serena would have difficulty refusing, without exposing that she wanted the sale for reasons unrelated to Ashgrove's survival. But the offer carried conditions. Before releasing money, the foundation required a verified inventory of every insured animal, a review of recent casualty claims, disclosure of related party contractors, and written certification from Ashgrove's executive director and treasurer. Denise looked directly at me. If Serena wants the money, she must sign a new statement saying Juniper is dead. Evelyn read the proposed conditions. If she certifies the false inventory while the mayor is alive, knowing questions have already been raised, that closes several exits. For the first time since the fire, I saw the shape of a counterattack that did not depend on anger, trespassing, or luck. We would not accuse Serena again. We would offer her exactly what she claimed to need: money to save Ashgrove. And before she touched a dollar, we would make her certify every lie she had told. Denise's phone vibrated. She read the message, then handed it to me. It was from the foundation's director. Formal emergency offer approved, executive certification required before Founders Night. Serena accepted the foundation's offer within 3 hours. She sent a message to the board describing the grant as proof that her leadership had restored confidence in Ashgrove. She did not mention that Denise had helped initiate the review, or that the money came with conditions designed to test every claim Serena had made. By the following morning, the regional foundation had appointed an independent compliance team. Their requirements were simple enough to sound harmless. Ashgrove had to provide a current inventory of all horses owned, leased, fostered, transferred, or declared deceased during the previous 24 months. Every recent casualty required supporting veterinary documentation. Every contractor with a personal relationship to an officer had to be disclosed. Fire protection systems had to be certified as operational. The executive director and board treasurer would sign the final report under penalty of repayment and referral to state authorities if material information proved false. Serena read the conditions at an emergency board meeting. "This is routine due diligence," she said. "We have nothing to hide." Grant sat along the wall, turning a silver pen between his fingers. Denise adjusted her glasses. The related party disclosure includes companies owned directly or indirectly by relatives. Serena did not look at Grant. "Then we will disclose legitimate relationships. What about Sterling Rhine?" The pen stopped moving. Serena's gaze settled on Denise. "Sterling Rhine is inactive and has no bearing on Ashgrove. It received funds from Ashgrove contractors. That is an accusation, it is a question." Martin Phelps raised both hands. "We cannot start another internal war. The foundation money may solve the insurance problem." Serena used his discomfort immediately. "Exactly, we need cooperation, not insinuation." She then turned to me. "May, as founder emeritus, would you be willing to support the review publicly?" Every face in the room shifted toward me. "I support any process that protects Daniel's work," I said. It was the truth. Serena smiled. "Good, then perhaps we can finally move forward as a family." She believed family was a word that made scrutiny impolite. The inventory process began that afternoon. Each horse was photographed from both sides. Staff recorded markings, age, medical status, ownership classification, microchip number, and current location. Animals housed off-site required confirmation from the receiving facility. Serena assigned Grant's office to coordinate outside placements. Denise objected. The contractor under review should not collect the records. Serena's smile tightened. Grant's logistics company arranged many of those transfers. He already has the contacts. That is precisely why the Foundation's reviewer should obtain them independently. For once, Martin agreed. The compliance team took control of the off-site list. Serena allowed it because refusing would have drawn more attention than cooperation. Before leaving the meeting, she signed a preliminary warranty stating that the submitted casualty records were complete and accurate to the best of her knowledge. Juniper appeared on page 14, deceased January 17. Serena initialed beside the entry. I watched the pen touch the paper, one exit closed. That evening, Tasha called me from an unfamiliar number. I found the family, she said. The mare had been moved from Hollow Creek to a small foster farm outside Frankfurt. The caretakers were Owen and Beth Mercer, a retired school custodian, and his wife. They had agreed to house a neglected chestnut mare for a rescue broker who claimed Ashgrove could no longer care for her. They had paid $1,500 toward transport and medical recovery. Do they know the horse may have been stolen? I asked. Not yet. Do not frighten them over the phone. Ask whether they will meet Dr. Ortega and an insurance investigator. The Mercers agreed only after Evelyn Shaw promised they would not be treated as suspects. We met at their farm the next morning. Juniper stood beneath a maple tree at the edge of a small paddock, her winter coat rougher than I remembered. She raised her head when my truck door closed. For one terrible second, she only stared. Then I called her name. Her ears came forward. She walked toward me slowly, dragging the toe of her right hind hoof through the grass. I had imagined that moment too many times. In some versions, I wept in others. I felt triumph. What I felt was shame. While Serena used Juniper's false death to raise money, the mare had been passed between strangers under a stolen name. I had failed to find her because I confronted the wrong people before securing the truth. Juniper stopped at the fence and pressed her nose against my palm. Beth Mercer watched from several feet away. We thought her name was Willow, she said. The broker said she came from a hoarding case. You took care of her. That matters. Owen handed Evelyn a folder containing the transfer receipt, payment instructions, and text messages from the broker. The payments led to Vale Agricultural Logistics. Dr. Ortega approached with a handheld scanner. The device beeped beneath the skin on the left side of Juniper's neck. He read the number aloud. It matched Juniper's original registrations exactly. Not the altered number in Willow's clinic file. The original. He completed a dental examination, photographed the white patch inside her ear, and took portable images of the repaired hock. The stainless anchor appeared clearly. Dr. Ortega compared the serial number to his old surgical record. It is her, he said. There is no reasonable veterinary doubt. Evelyn documented every step. She then arranged for Juniper to remain with the Mercers under a formal evidence preservation agreement until the Foundation review concluded. We can act now, Tasha said. Not yet, I answered. Serena had signed a preliminary inventory, but the final certification would occur at the gala. Until then, she could claim that Grant supplied incorrect information or that new facts emerged after her review. We needed her to sign after receiving one last opportunity to verify everything. So we let the process continue. For 6 days, Serena answered questions, produced selected records, and assured donors that the Foundation's interest proved Ashgrove was healthy enough to attract support. Her confidence grew with every hour we remained silent. Then, on the morning before Founders' Night, the board received a revised agenda. Serena had added an emergency resolution authorizing Vale Restoration to demolish the archive barn immediately after the gala. The stated reason was structural instability. The inspection attached to the resolution had been signed by Grant. Demolition would begin at 10 o'clock that night, 2 hours after Serena certified the inventory. The demolition order changed the problem. Until then, we had been building a fraud case. Now we had to protect evidence from a man who had already interfered with one fire suppression system and appeared to be preparing another final loss. Denise filed a written objection, citing the Foundation review. Serena replied that the archive barn had become an immediate structural hazard. Grant's inspection supported her claim. The report included photographs of cracked trusses, water-stained rafters, and a leaning wall. I recognized two images. They had been taken years earlier in a tobacco barn outside Midway. He had altered the file labels, not the buildings. We sent copies to Evelyn Shaw and preserved the metadata. But formal channels might not stop demolition before Founders Night. Our advantage was that Serena still believed I had accepted retirement. 2 days before the gala, Dr. Ortega asked me to meet him at his clinic. He had completed his identification report on Juniper and wanted the language reviewed before releasing it to Evelyn. The report described the microchip, dental pattern, white marking inside the left ear, chronic toe drag, and surgical implant serial number. Each feature alone might be challenged. Together they left no credible room for substitution. I arrived through the rear entrance shortly after noon. Evelyn joined us by secure video while Denise remained with Carl, organizing the financial exhibits. At the end, Dr. Ortega signed the report and sealed the original for courier pickup. I left carrying only a yellow legal pad and an old black field notebook. The notebook was a decoy. For 3 nights, I had filled it with the kind of observations Serena wanted people to believe I was making. Half-finished timelines, questions repeated on different pages, Daniel's name in the margins. Emotional phrases I would never place in a professional record. Juniper looked at me in a dream. Maybe Daniel tried to warn me. The fire might have started everywhere at once. It hurt to write them. But a useful decoy must offer the enemy exactly what he hopes to find. I placed the notebook inside a canvas bag with public invoices, a blurred photograph of the mayor, and a dead hearing aid battery. The real evidence had already left by insured courier. As I crossed the parking lot, sunlight flashed across a windshield near the far fence. A dark pickup sat beneath a sycamore tree. Grant was behind the wheel. He lowered his phone when he saw me looking. For 1 second, neither of us moved. Then I turned toward my truck as though I had not recognized him. Grant started his engine. I drove east, taking a narrow road past several breeding farms. He followed 4 vehicles behind. When I slowed, he slowed. When I turned, he turned after me. I had spent years approaching scenes where frightened people watched from parked cars. The lesson was simple. Never let the person following you choose where the conversation occurs. I pulled into a busy farm supply store with cameras above every entrance and customers loading feed in daylight. Grant parked behind me. I carried the canvas bag toward the store. His voice came from 6 feet away. I turned slowly and touched my right hearing aid. "I'm sorry? What were you doing at Ortega's clinic?" "Who?" He stepped closer. "Do not play this game." A young employee pushing carts glanced toward us. Grant noticed and lowered his voice. "Serena asked me to make sure you were not harassing former Ashgrove veterinarians. She asked you to follow me. She is worried about you." "People seem to worry about me most when I ask for records." His eyes dropped to the bag. "What is in there?" "Personal notes about Juniper?" I allowed a pause long enough to look guilty. Grant reached for the strap. I moved back. "If you touch me, the cameras will show it." His hands stopped. "You can give me the bag voluntarily," he said, "or I can tell Serena you are conducting another unauthorized investigation and have you banned from the gala." I looked toward the store entrance, then at the bag, performing the calculation he expected from a frightened old woman. "Bring it back," I said. He took it immediately. Grant opened the bag on the hood of his truck. He examined the invoices, then the blurred photograph. When he found the notebook, he read quickly, satisfaction replacing suspicion. He stopped at the sentence about Daniel warning me in a dream. The corner of his mouth lifted. "This is your evidence?" "I know what I saw. You do not know anything." He photographed several pages, then he found a rough sketch of the West Barn. I had deliberately marked 3 conflicting origin points and written question marks beside each. Grant held it up. "You accused me of arson based on this?" "I never accused you of arson." Not in those words. He pushed the notebook into the bag and handed it back. "You should stay home on Founders Night. Serena asked me to speak. She may reconsider after she sees this." I let my face collapse slightly. Please don't show Eli. That pleased him more than anything else. He climbed into his truck with the confidence of a man who believed he had found the weakness that would end me. I waited until he drove away before entering the store. Inside, I called Evelyn and reported the encounter. The cameras had recorded Grant taking and photographing my property. The notebook contained no protected evidence, but his behavior showed that he was trying to discover what we knew. I should have felt relief. Instead, I remembered the horse trailer that had pulled away from Dr. Ortega's rear loading area before I left. It belonged to another clinic client, not Juniper's caretakers. Grant had seen it. He might not believe the notebook completely. Across the parking lot, his truck stopped at the exit instead of turning onto the highway. Through the windshield, I saw him raise his phone. Tasha called me 12 minutes later. Her voice was barely audible. Grant just spoke to Serena, she said. I heard him through the records barn office. What did he say? Tasha swallowed. He said, she has nothing but move the cleanup forward. Move the cleanup forward. Tasha's words remained in my ear after the call ended. Grant had seen through enough of the decoy to remain cautious. He did not know what evidence we possessed, but he understood that time favored us. His answer was to take time away. At 6 the next morning, every board member received an emergency notice from Serena. Founders' Night had been moved forward by 24 hours. She blamed an approaching line of severe thunderstorms expected to cross central Kentucky on the original date. The gala would now begin that evening at 6. The board would vote on the Halcyon Ridge transaction at 8. Vale Restoration would begin clearing the archive barn immediately afterward. We had less than 12 hours, Denise called before I finished reading the notice. She cannot move a major asset vote without proper notice. She just did. I am filing an objection. She wants you to. Denise went quiet. Serena had stopped trying to avoid scrutiny. She was provoking procedural conflict because she already had a response prepared. It arrived 40 minutes later. Serena distributed a memorandum accusing Denise of accessing confidential financial records outside approved channels and sharing them with unauthorized individuals. Pending an internal investigation, Denise was suspended from her duties as treasurer and barred from executive session. Martin Phelps had signed the suspension, so had 2 other board members. They are removing the person required to certify the foundation review, Denise said, which means Serena plans to replace you with someone who will sign. The bylaws allow an interim treasurer by majority vote. Who? We learned the answer an hour later. Serena nominated Martin. He was not dishonest. That made him useful. Martin hated confrontation, trusted professional-looking documents, and wanted every crisis resolved before dinner. Serena would give him an orderly binder, a reassuring explanation, and a line marked for his signature. He would sign because refusing would feel like destroying Ash Grove. Denise paced inside her kitchen while rain began tapping against the windows. We should contact the Attorney General now. With what? I asked. Suspicious payments, a horse we have not yet presented, and an alarm log tied to credentials Grant can claim were misused. We have enough for an injunction. Perhaps by tomorrow. There may not be an archive tomorrow. She stopped pacing. I understood her frustration. Every instinct said to strike before Serena could destroy the remaining records. But moving too early might preserve the building, while allowing Serena to escape responsibility for the larger fraud. Evelyn Shaw was supposed to attend the gala as an official representative of the insurance carrier. Her presence mattered. She could authenticate the casualty claim, preserve the live identification evidence, and prevent Serena from dismissing Juniper as a private family stunt. At noon, Evelyn called from Interstate 64. A tractor trailer had overturned near Winchester during the first wave of storms. Traffic was blocked in both directions. She had not moved in 40 minutes. How long? I asked. No estimate. Can the state send someone else? The nearest qualified investigator is in Louisville. Then join by video, if the network holds. Thunder rolled beyond my windows. The storm Serena had used as an excuse was real enough to become an obstacle. Dr. Ortega was available. The foundation's compliance director had already reached Lexington. The Mercer family could bring Juniper through the rear livestock entrance shortly before the vote. But without Evelyn physically present, Custody and documentation would be easier to challenge. We proceed, I said. Evelyn hesitated. May, if the weather prevents a clean identification record, do not force the reveal. If we wait, the archive is emptied. Evidence inside a barn is not worth a public failure that warns every suspect. She was right. I intended to proceed anyway. By 2 o'clock, Ashgrove had become a construction site disguised as a celebration. Caterers carried silver trays into the arena. Florists secured arrangements against the rising wind. Grant's workers positioned 2 empty disposal containers beside the archive barn. I arrived wearing the navy suit Serena had selected for my retirement tribute. My founder badge no longer opened the staff entrance. Tasha let me through the lower stable door. Grant moved the records crew to 8:15, she whispered. They are starting as soon as the vote ends. Where is Eli? I haven't seen him. That worried me more than Grant's schedule. Eli had not answered my calls since our meeting at the diner. Serena might have told him about the decoy notebook. Or he might have decided that loyalty required silence. I found Dr. Ortega in a temporary examination stall behind the arena. He had brought his scanner, portable imaging unit, and Juniper's original surgical records. The Mercers are 15 minutes away, he said. Keep her inside the transport trailer until I send Tasha. If the crowd becomes dangerous, I am taking the horse out. Agreed. The Foundation's compliance director, a woman named Paula Kent, arrived carrying the final certification binder. She looked unsettled. Mrs. Hollis, Serena says the inventory review is complete. Has she signed? Not yet. She plans to execute the certification publicly before the board vote. That was better than we had hoped. Serena wanted the audience to see her securing the emergency grant. She replaced Denise with Martin, Paula said. Our terms require the treasurer's signature. We may have to delay approval. Do not delay the signing ceremony. I cannot release funds on defective governance. You do not need to release anything tonight. You only need to give Serena the opportunity to certify her records. Paula studied me, then she understood. At 4:30 I saw Eli's truck near Daniel's old office. I found him inside, standing before a locked cabinet with a sheet of paper in his hand. His face was pale. What happened? He folded the paper too quickly. Nothing. On Serena's desk lay a wooden-handled stamp. I recognized the signature immediately. Daniel Hollis, my son's name, reproduced in dark blue ink. Ellie looked from the stamp to me. Mom said Dad authorized Grant's safety contracts before he died. Did he? I found 3 documents dated after the funeral. The room seemed to narrow. Serena had not merely stolen from Daniel while he was alive. She had continued using his authority after his death. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. Ellie pushed the paper beneath his jacket. You need to leave, he whispered. Come with me. I can't. Not yet. The door handle moved. I stepped into the adjoining records closet and pulled it almost shut. Through the narrow gap I saw Serena enter. You're late, she told Eli. I was at the clinic. Did you bring the forms? He handed her a folder. Serena opened it, checked the pages, then picked up Daniel's signature stamp. Eli watched her press his dead father's name beneath a fire safety certification. His hand tightened at his side. Serena did not notice. 20 minutes later, my phone vibrated as I stood beneath the arena lights waiting for the guests to arrive. The message was from Eli. I need to tell you what I signed and what Mom asked me to burn. Ellie's message arrived at 5:12. The gala doors opened at 5:30. I called him twice. Both calls went to voicemail. At 5:21 I sent one reply. Meet me behind the south loading gate before the board vote. Bring everything. Do not confront her alone. The message showed as delivered. He never answered. By 6 o'clock, the indoor arena no longer looked like a place where frightened teenagers learned to trust 1,000-pound animals. White fabric concealed the steel rails. Round tables covered the riding surface beneath suspended chandeliers. A temporary stage stood where Daniel once taught veterans how to approach a horse without hiding their fear. More than 500 guests filled the room. Donors wore black tie. Board members sat beneath a banner displaying Daniel's photograph beside the words, "Preserving the Mission." Local reporters occupied a press section near the main aisle. Representatives from Halcyon Ridge sat at Serena's table with leather folders beside their plates. She had arranged the evening as both memorial and coronation. I entered through the public lobby because my founder badge still did not work. A young security employee met me at the door. Mrs. Hollis, Miss Hollis asked that you wear this tonight. He handed me a guest credential, suspended from a silver cord. It read, May Hollis, Huncord founder, not owner, not director, not investigator. A historical exhibit with a pulse. I placed it around my neck. Serena approached in a dark green gown as cameras turned toward us. She took both my hands and kissed my cheek. You look beautiful, she said. So do you. I hope tonight gives you peace. I expect it will. For half a second she studied my face. Then Martin Phelps appeared, carrying the Foundation's certification binder. Everything is ready, he told her. Paula has marked the signature pages. Excellent. Denise filed another objection. Serena's smile remained in place. Denise is no longer treasurer. Tonight is about solutions, not grudges. Martin nodded as if he had been given permission to stop thinking. I looked toward the south loading entrance. No Eli. Tasha passed carrying champagne. Without turning her head, she whispered, The Mercers are in position. Juniper is calm. Any sign of my grandson? No, Grant. Archive barn, then the pump room. He has 2 men waiting in a truck. The storm pressed against the metal roof in waves. If the power failed, Serena would call the evening compromised. If the livestock road flooded, the Mercers might not get Juniper out safely. At 6:45 dinner began. Serena moved between tables with effortless warmth. She greeted veterans by name and introduced Halcyon's representatives as partners in Ashgrove's future. Grant returned wearing a tuxedo, though mud darkened one shoe. He stopped beside my chair. I heard you visited Ortega again, he said. The orchestra made conversation difficult. I touched my hearing aid. I'm sorry? His mouth curved. I said I hope you enjoy your tribute. Oh, thank you. You should be proud. Most people do not get to choose the moment they become a memory. He walked away. At 7:30 the lights dimmed. A film began on the arena screens. Daniel appeared leading a rescued gelding from a trailer. Frank hammered boards onto the first barn. A younger version of me stood in a muddy field holding rolled plans. Then the images shifted, Serena with donors, Serena opening a therapy wing, Serena comforting staff after Daniel's death. By the end, the film had transformed Ashgrove's history into a bridge between Daniel's dream and Serena's leadership. I was shown as the beginning, she was presented as the future. The audience stood when she walked onto the stage. Ashgrove was born from pain, she began, but it survived because pain was transformed into service. Her speech was skillful. She spoke of Daniel without sounding possessive, of me without sounding cruel, and of the land sale without using the word sale. She called it a strategic preservation partnership. Halcyon would receive the valuable acreage. Ashgrove would receive financial freedom. Buildings would be demolished, but the mission would live beyond the limitations of place. Then she invited me onto the stage. The applause began before I stood. I walked slowly, allowing one hand to rest on the rail. I did not need the support, but weakness was the final gift I intended to give Serena. She placed a glass sculpture in my hands. It depicted a horse emerging from a flame. The inscription read, To May Hollis. With gratitude for a lifetime of service, Serena faced the audience. May has made the courageous decision to retire from all active involvement and entrust Ashgrove to the next generation. Cameras flashed. I looked toward Eli's empty chair at the family table. He had not come. Perhaps Serena had found his message. Perhaps Grant had stopped him. Or perhaps my grandson had decided that protecting his mother mattered more than telling the truth. Serena extended the microphone. I accepted it. Thank you, I said. Ashgrove has taught me that trust is not something we inherit. It is something our actions either earn or destroy. A few people shifted in their seats. Serena's smile tightened. I handed the microphone back. At 8:03, Paula Kent brought the certification binder to center stage. Martin signed first as interim treasurer. His hand trembled, but he did not stop. Serena signed every warranty. She certified that all related party transactions had been disclosed. She certified that all fire safety systems were operational. She certified that the casualty inventory was complete and accurate. Beside Juniper's name, she wrote her initials again. Paula closed the binder. One by one, the reasonable exits disappeared. The board secretary opened the vote on the Halcyon transaction. Grant moved toward the side doors. My phone remained silent. I could wait no longer. I removed the silver guest credential from my neck and placed it beside the retirement sculpture. Then I walked down from the stage. "May." Serena called. I continued toward the arena gate. The security guard stepped into my path. "Mrs. Hollis, you are no longer authorized on the arena floor." Behind me, Serena spoke into the microphone with gentle embarrassment. "Please forgive us. May has been under tremendous strain." I handed the guard my useless founder's badge. Then I opened the gate. Tasha stood on the other side, holding a lead rope, and beside her, alive beneath the white arena lights, was Juniper. Juniper hesitated at the threshold. The arena smelled of perfume, hot food, damp wool, and hundreds of strangers. Light from the chandeliers struck her eyes. Her muscles tightened beneath the chestnut coat, and for a moment I feared she would pull back. I placed one hand against her neck. "It's all right, girl." She breathed against my shoulder, then stepped forward. Her hooves landed on the packed clay, with a rhythm every microphone in the room seemed to capture. The security guard moved toward us. "Mrs. Hollis, you need to stop." "Let her through," Paula Kent said. The foundation's compliance director had risen from her table. She held the certification binder against her chest. Serena remained on stage. Her face had lost its color, but her voice was steady. "This is not Juniper," she said through the microphone. "May has brought an unrelated horse into a crowded event as part of a personal campaign against Ashgrove." Grant reached the side doors. Two men in plain suits stepped into his path. They were investigators from the State Insurance Fraud Unit. Evelyn Shaw had arranged for them to attend when the highway accident prevented her from reaching Lexington. Grant stopped. One of the men spoke quietly to him. I could not hear the words, but Grant's hand left the door handle. I led Juniper to the center of the arena. Tasha walked beside us, carrying a portable reader and a sealed evidence case. Dr. Ortega followed with the Mercer family. Beth Mercer looked terrified by the crowd. Owen kept one hand beneath her elbow. Serena pointed toward them. "These people have no authority to seize Ashgrove property." "We did not seize her," Evelyn Shaw's voice said. Her image appeared on the arena's main screen through a live video connection. Traffic lights flashed faintly through the car window behind her. The current caretakers voluntarily presented the horse for examination after learning that her identity may have been falsified. Serena looked toward the control booth. "Turn that off." No one moved. Paula stepped onto the arena floor. "Ms. Hollis, you certified less than 10 minutes ago that Juniper died on January 17th, and that all information submitted to the Foundation was complete and accurate. That certification was based on professional records. You were informed months ago that a living horse might be Juniper." I was confronted with a blurred photograph and the delusions of a grieving woman. The words passed through the speakers and reached every person in the room. I had expected them to hurt. They did not. Dr. Ortega opened the evidence case. "This scanner has been tested and documented," he said. "The process will be recorded continuously." He passed the reader slowly along the left side of Juniper's neck. The device beeped. A number appeared on its small screen. The same number appeared enlarged above us. Paula opened the certified inventory and projected Juniper's registered record beside it. Every digit matched. A murmur rolled across the tables. Serena lifted her chin. "Microchips can be removed and implanted in another animal." "They can," Dr. Ortega said, "which is why identification does not depend on the chip alone." He displayed two dental images. The first came from Juniper's treatment records 4 years earlier. The second had been taken at the Mercer farm under Evelyn's documented supervision. A distinctive gap appeared between the same rear teeth. The wear patterns aligned. Next came a photograph of the white patch inside Juniper's left ear. Then an old radiograph of the repaired hock. Dr. Ortega activated his portable imaging unit and positioned it beside Juniper's right hind leg. She shifted once, then settled when I touched her shoulder. The new image appeared on the screen. A small steel surgical anchor showed clearly inside the joint. Dr. Ortega enlarged the serial number recorded in his original surgery file. It matched the implant inside the mare standing before us. "There is no reasonable veterinary doubt," he said. "This horse is Juniper." The room became so quiet I heard rain striking the roof. Serena stared at the screen. For the first time that evening, she had no prepared expression. Grant found his voice first. "She acted alone. Every face turned toward him. He pointed at Serena. She handled the insurance claim. She signed the casualty report. I only arranged transportation after the fire. Serena looked at her brother with disbelief. You arranged everything. I followed your instructions. Martin Phelps pushed back from the board table. What exactly are you saying? Serena recovered before Grant could answer. She is saying nothing because he is panicking. May has manufactured this entire spectacle to stop a lawful vote. I removed the scorched brass halter plate from my pocket and placed it on the judge's table. This was found beside fresh hoofprints at Ash Grove weeks after Juniper was declared dead. That proves nothing, Serena said. Paula opened the binder. This does. She displayed Serena's signed warranty on the screen. The document certified 3 facts. Juniper was dead, no officer had concealed an animal's location, and all related companies had been disclosed. A second page appeared beside it. Sterling Reen Equestrian Events, Serena's ownership record. Then came the transfers from Grant's shell contractors, the false temporary housing charges, and the payments from restricted fire donations. Donors began standing. One woman near the front demanded to know whether her contribution for injured horses had paid Serena's private debts. A Halcyon Ridge representative closed his leather folder and whispered to his attorney. Martin stared at his own signature in the certification binder. You told me these records had been independently verified. They were, Serena said. By whom? Staff, veterinarians, Grant. Grant laughed once, without humor. Do not put this on me. You created the casualty file. You ordered the mare moved. Serena stepped away from the microphone. The argument between them no longer needed prompting. Pressure had done what interrogation could not. Each was searching for a path out, and each path required pushing the other deeper inside. Paula raised her voice. The Foundation is suspending its offer. The certification and all supporting materials are being preserved for referral to state regulators and law enforcement. The board secretary moved to close the vote. At that moment, a sharp electronic tone sounded through the arena. Not the soft chime used for announcements, a fire alarm. People looked toward the exits. The arena screen changed automatically from Juniper's records to Ash Grove's emergency control display. A red indicator flashed over the archive barn. Smoke detected. Zone 4. I looked toward Grant. Mud still marked the edge of his shoe. Then a second warning appeared beneath the first. Suppression system. Manila Dal, the archive barn was burning. And someone had shut off the water. Everyone remained seated. Serena's command came through the microphone before the alarm completed its second cycle. It was the wrong instruction. Smoke had been detected in a separate building, but the archive barn stood less than 80 yards from the indoor arena. Wind was driving hard from the west. If the fire reached the hay storage wing or cut power to the property, 600 frightened guests could become more dangerous than the flames. I took the microphone from the abandoned judge's table. This is May Hollis. We are evacuating through the east and south exits. Leave coats and personal items behind. Walk, do not run. My old voice returned without effort. Years of emergency scenes had taught me that people borrow calm from whoever sounds certain. Tasha, confirm the stable aisles. Her radio answered immediately. Lower barns clear. Therapy horses were moved to the east pasture before the gala. She had acted on instinct hours earlier, placing the animals beyond the archive barn because she did not trust Grant's demolition crew. Dr. Ortega, take Juniper through the livestock gate. Paula, bring the certification binder. Board members, assist guests at the south doors. Serena crossed the arena floor toward me. You have no authority to take control of this event. The building does not care who is executive director. A fresh alarm appeared on the control screen. Fire pump offline. That was not a consequence of smoke. Someone had shut down the system at its source. I pointed toward the 2 state investigators. The pump room is behind the archive barn. Grant was there this afternoon. Grant had disappeared. One investigator spoke into his radio and ran toward the service exit with the other close behind. The audience began moving. Chairs scraped across the clay, glassware overturned, and frightened voices rose beneath the alarm. Martin Phelps stood frozen beside the board table until I caught his eye. Doctor, take that section. The command gave him something useful to do. He guided elderly guests toward the nearest exit. Serena grabbed my arm. If anyone is injured, this is on you. I looked at her hand until she released me. If anyone is injured, it will be because someone disabled another suppression system. Lightning flashed through the high arena windows. The power flickered once, then held outside. Rain blew sideways across the courtyard. Smoke pushed from beneath the archive barn roof in black sheets, flattening toward the ground before lifting over the pasture. The fire department had already been dispatched by the monitored alarm, but the first engine was several minutes away. I moved closer only far enough to read the scene. Flame glowed behind the office windows. The deepest burning appeared near the records room, exactly where the original veterinary ledgers, transport forms, contractor logs, and retired computer drives were stored. This fire had not begun in an electrical panel. It had begun where the evidence lived. Tasha joined me beneath the arena overhang. "Everyone is out," she said. I checked the staff bathroom and feed room. "Where are Grant's workers?" "Their truck is gone." A metallic crash sounded from behind the archive barn. One of the state investigators shouted. We moved along the covered walkway until the pump building came into view. The door stood open. Inside, emergency lights flashed against pipes and control panels. Grant was on the floor. An investigator had forced him onto his stomach and secured one wrist behind his back. His tuxedo jacket was torn, and soot streaked the side of his face. Beside him lay a red plastic fuel container. The second investigator held a thick leather ledger sealed inside a clear evidence bag. Grant twisted his head toward me. "This is your fault," he shouted. "You forced everything to happen tonight." "No," I said. "I only refused to let you choose what survived." He struggled against the investigator's grip. "I came here to save the records with fuel." "That was already inside, and the disabled pump?" "I found it that way." The investigator lifted a small black device from the floor. "A bypass key was in his pocket," he said. Grant stopped talking. Sirens approached through the storm. Fire engines entered the service road, their lights staining the rain red. Crews stretched hose toward the archive barn, while another firefighter restored the pump manually. Water struck the roof in a white arc. The structure would survive in some form, but the office interior was already heavily damaged. Serena arrived beneath an umbrella held by a security employee. When she saw Grant in handcuffs, she stepped backward. "Do not say anything," she told him. He laughed bitterly. "That advice is late. You acted without my authorization. You scheduled the cleanup. I scheduled record removal, not a fire. You said nothing could remain." The firefighters, investigators, staff, and several board members heard him. Serena realized it too late. Her expression changed from authority to calculation. "He is frightened and confused," she said. "Grant has been under financial pressure. Whatever he did tonight was his decision." "Mom," Ellie's voice came from behind us. He stood in the rain without a coat. His hair was soaked, and one side of his lower lip was split. He held his phone in one hand and a scorched paper folder in the other. I moved toward him. "What happened?" "Uncle Grant found me in Dad's office." Grant looked away. "He took the forms," Eli continued. "He said I had already chosen a side when I signed them." Serena extended her hand. "Ellie, give me the phone." He did not move. "You are upset," she said. "You do not understand what is happening. I understand the messages." Her hand lowered. Eli opened the phone and gave it to the nearest investigator. The screen showed a conversation between Serena and Grant. The messages covered months: instructions to move Juniper after midnight, orders to change the last digit of her microchip entry, directions to bill Hollow Creek through Vale Agricultural Logistics, a reminder to destroy the original transport manifest. Then the message sent that afternoon: clear the archive after the vote. Use the storm if you have to. Nothing original survives. Serena stared at her son. "You accessed private communications. You used Dad's signature after he died. I was preserving his authority. You were stealing it." The pain in his voice silenced even Grant. Denise appeared beside Paula Kent, carrying a waterproof document case. Though suspended from the board, she had brought the records Evelyn told her to preserve. She opened the case beneath the overhang. "There is another relationship the board was never told about," she said. She handed Martin the ownership filings for Sable Creek Advisory, the company scheduled to receive $600,000 when Halcyon Ridge purchased Ash Grove. Serena was its authorized beneficiary. Martin read the page, then looked at her. "You were going to earn a private fee from the sale?" It was legitimate consulting compensation for engineering a crisis that forced us to sell. I saved this organization after Daniel died. Denise removed one final ledger summary. I traced the contractor transfers to their beginning. Her voice had changed. The auditor's certainty had replaced her shame. The first diverted payment did not occur after Daniel's death. It occurred 14 months before it. I looked at the date. My son had still been alive. Serena had been stealing from Ashgrove while sleeping beside him, raising money in his name, and helping him search for the financial leak she had created. The fire crews worked until after midnight. They saved the archive barn's outer frame, but the records office was gutted. Water and smoke damaged hundreds of files. Several computers melted into black shapes beneath the collapsed ceiling. What Grant intended to destroy was damaged, but not erased. The leather transport ledger he carried from the building survived inside the investigator's evidence bag. Denise had already preserved the financial backups. The alarm company retained the original system logs, and Eli's phone contained instructions Serena could not blame on a dead employee or careless bookkeeper. Fire destroys paper more easily than patterns. By dawn, the state police had taken Grant into custody on suspicion of arson, evidence tampering, insurance fraud, and conspiracy. His shoes, clothing, phone, and truck were collected. Investigators found 2 more fuel containers beneath a tarp in the vehicle, along with blank Vale restoration invoices and replacement labels for Ashgrove's electronic archives. Serena was not handcuffed that night. That angered several people. They expected justice to arrive with sirens, steel cuffs, and a public walk through the crowd. Real investigations are often slower. Serena's phone was seized under warrant. She was ordered not to access Ashgrove's systems or contact staff involved in the inquiry. She left the property in the back seat of her attorney's car. Even then, she sat upright. Even then, she looked through the window as though the farm still belonged to her. The board suspended her before sunrise. Halcyon Ridge withdrew its purchase offer by noon. Its representatives claimed they had no knowledge of Serena's private consulting arrangement. Whether that was true became another question for investigators. The foundation froze its grant. The insurer suspended all pending payments and reopened 3 previous claims. Bluegrass Community Bank issued a temporary standstill agreement, giving Ashgrove 60 days to prove it could operate under independent management. We had stopped the sale. We had not saved the farm yet. Reporters remained outside the entrance for 2 weeks. Donors called demanding refunds. Parents withdrew teenagers from therapy sessions. 2 corporate sponsors removed Ashgrove's name from their websites before investigators filed a single formal charge. People who had praised Serena's leadership now described her as someone they had never trusted. That is another kind of dishonesty. The state appointed an interim board. Denise resigned as treasurer during the first meeting. I failed in the exact way I spent my career warning others about, she said. I approved summaries because the paperwork looked professional and the explanations arrived on time. No one asked her to leave, she did anyway. Tasha became temporary stable manager because she knew every horse, every employee, and every weakness Serena had hidden behind presentation. Her first decision was to suspend all Vale-related contracts. Her second was to place copies of animal records with an independent veterinary service. Dr. Ortega coordinated the review of every horse Serena's office had transferred during the previous 2 years. They found Juniper. They also found 2 more animals whose identities had been altered. One had been declared permanently disabled and transferred to a sanctuary that never received her. Another had generated duplicate transportation charges through 2 of Grant's companies. Both were alive. That discovery expanded the criminal case beyond 1 fire and 1 false casualty report. 6 weeks after Founders Night, a grand jury indicted Grant on multiple counts, including arson, insurance fraud, charity fraud, evidence destruction, and conspiracy. Serena was charged separately with charity fraud, falsifying business records, insurance fraud, conspiracy, and misuse of restricted donations. Additional charges remained possible as investigators examined Daniel's stamped signatures and the proposed land sale. Her attorney released a statement describing her as a grieving widow who had relied on dishonest advisors. Grant's attorney called Serena the sole architect. Their partnership ended exactly as it had functioned, each using the other as protection. The deepest wound arrived quietly. An investigator returned Daniel's old laptop after the forensic review. Most of the relevant financial files had already been copied, but one unsent email remained in his drafts. It was addressed to me. Daniel had written it 3 weeks before his accident. Mom, I think something is wrong with the restoration accounts. Serena says I am seeing patterns because I do not understand the new system. I do not want to accuse my wife without proof. Can you look at the contracts when you have time? He never sent it. Perhaps he changed his mind. Perhaps Serena interrupted him. Perhaps he intended to speak to me after the donor meeting from which he never returned. I read those lines alone in his office. For months, I had blamed myself for asking Daniel to attend that meeting on the night he died. I had imagined that one invitation placed him on the highway at the wrong hour. Now I understood that he had been carrying a different burden. He had begun to suspect the woman beside him. He had doubted his own judgment because she told him his concern was ignorance. The same method she later used on me. I pressed my hand against the desk and wept for the first time since the gala. Not because Daniel had failed to stop her, because he had been alone with the truth before he knew it was truth. Ely cooperated fully with investigators. He surrendered emails, bank notifications, and every document he remembered signing. Prosecutors did not charge him, but immunity from prosecution did not make him innocent of carelessness. His signature had moved horses. His silence had protected Serena. His fear had helped isolate me. He moved into a rented room near his veterinary clinic and stopped asking me to defend him. For a while, that was the first responsible choice he made. Ash Grove reduced its operations by half. We suspended the adolescent program, placed 9 horses with trusted partners, and laid off employees I had known for years. Every decision felt like cutting healthy tissue to stop an infection from spreading. Saving a legacy did not mean preserving every piece of it. Sometimes survival required admitting what could no longer be carried. 4 months after the fire, Eli came to the farm near sunset. I found him outside Juniper's paddock. He looked thinner and older than 23. "I'm not here to ask you to forgive, Mom," he said. "That is good. I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight either." I waited. He looked through the fence at Juniper. "When Ash Grove starts hiring again, will there ever be a place for me here?" I wanted to tell him yes. I wanted Daniel's son home, but love had already made too many promises that evidence had not earned. "I don't know," I said. Eli nodded. The answer hurt, but did not surprise him. Then he placed his old Ash Grove identification badge on the fence post between us and walked away. 10 months after Founders Night, Ash Grove reopened its adolescent recovery program. We did not mark the occasion with chandeliers, champagne, or speeches written for cameras. Tasha unlocked the arena doors at 7 in the morning. Dr. Ortega checked the horses before the first participants arrived. Denise stood in the office comparing purchase orders against bank records, though she no longer held a title that required her to do so. By 8:30, a white passenger van turned through the stone entrance. 5 teenagers stepped out. They carried the familiar armor of young people who had stopped trusting adults. Lowered eyes, crossed arms, headphones worn without music, expressions designed to end conversations before they began. One girl remained beside the van. Her name was Lila. She was 16, recently placed with her aunt after a year of instability no child should have been expected to survive. The program coordinator explained that she had not spoken during either intake interview. I watched from the arena rail as Tasha approached her. "We have coffee inside," Tasha said. "Hot chocolate too." Lila stared toward the pasture. "What if I don't want to ride?" "Then you won't." "What if I don't want to talk?" "Then I'll try not to take it personally." The girl looked at her. For the first time, Tasha had become Ash Grove's operations director 3 months earlier. The board voted unanimously, but she accepted only after making them remove the word interim from the offer. Her first year in leadership was not glamorous. She negotiated feed contracts, rewrote emergency plans, filled vacant shifts, and answered angry calls from people who believed every charity scandal proved all charities were dishonest. She never tried to sound impressive. That helped. The new board included a veterinarian, a veteran program graduate, an insurance specialist, 2 community representatives, and no relatives of mine. Related party contracts required public disclosure and independent review. No executive could select a family member's company without competitive bids and board approval. Every horse was scanned twice a year. Every transfer required 2 signatures from people who had actually read the document. Every fire system change generated an alert outside Ashgrove's own network. The rules were not an insult to trust. They were what allowed trust to survive human weakness. Denise returned as an unpaid compliance advisor after 4 months away. At first, she refused. "I should not be rewarded for finding courage after negligence," she told me. "It isn't a reward," I said, "it's work." She considered that, then she accepted. She trained the new treasurer, reviewed controls, and began speaking to nonprofit boards about how experienced people can become dangerous when their confidence exceeds their attention. She never excused what she had missed. That was why I trusted her again. The criminal cases moved slowly. Grant accepted a plea agreement after the state recovered deleted messages connecting him to the West Barn fire, the archive fire, false contractors, and altered horse records. He received a substantial prison sentence and was ordered to pay restitution he would probably never satisfy. Serena chose trial. She continued describing herself as the widow who had saved Ashgrove from collapse. Her attorneys argued that Grant manipulated operations while Denise failed to supervise the money. But signatures matter, so do messages, hidden ownership interests, false certifications, and the recorded instruction to destroy original evidence. A jury convicted her on multiple counts of charity fraud, conspiracy, falsifying records, and insurance fraud. The arson-related charge required a separate proceeding, but by then the future she had constructed was gone. Her name was removed from Ashgrove's leadership wall. Daniel's remained. I did not attend the sentencing. Justice did not require me to watch her lose every remaining piece of her life. Ellie did. He visited his mother twice before the trial and once afterward. Some people criticized him for it. I did not. Serena had betrayed him, used his signature, and tried to turn him against everyone who might expose her. She was still his mother. Boundaries are not the same as pretending love never existed. 3 months after he left his badge on the fence post, Eli applied for an open veterinary assistant position. He did not call me first. He completed the same application as everyone else, provided references, disclosed his role in the investigation, and sat before a hiring panel that did not include me. Tasha offered him a 6-month supervised position, no access to financial systems, no authority over animal transfers, no shortcuts because his last name appeared on the gate. He arrived early, cleaned stalls without complaint, and asked before signing anything. For the first several weeks, our conversations remained practical. Juniper's right hock is warm, call Dr. Ortiga. The south pasture trough is leaking, put in a maintenance request. He did not ask whether I forgave him. He understood that the question placed the burden back on me. Instead, he worked. One November morning, I found him repairing the latch on Juniper's paddock. His old identification badge hung from his belt beside the new temporary one Tasha had issued. "You kept it," I said. He looked down at the brass-edged badge he had left on the fence months earlier. "You picked it up." "I did. I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either." He tightened the final bolt. "I used to think being part of this family meant I belonged here no matter what I did. And now? Now I think belonging is something you can damage." He met my eyes, and maybe rebuild. That was the closest either of us came to asking for forgiveness. It was enough for that day. I no longer managed Ashgrove's daily operations. The board gave me a founder's advisory seat, and I attended when invited or when safety required my experience. The first time I missed a meeting, because I chose to spend the morning fishing, no one called it decline. I had stepped away because I was ready. That difference mattered. On the morning the adolescent program reopened, Lila finally entered the arena. Tasha did not hand her a saddle. She introduced her to Juniper. The mare stood quietly near the rail, sunlight warming the chestnut hair along her back. Lila approached with both hands buried in the pockets of her sweatshirt. "She died," the girl said. Tasha glanced at me. "People wrote that she did." Lila studied the mare, but she didn't. "No, Juniper lowered her head. The girl removed one hand from her pocket and held it beneath the mare's nose. Juniper breathed against her fingers, then stepped closer. Above the entrance to the restored archive barn hung the scorched brass plate I had carried into the gala. Juniper AER 1174. We could have polished away the blackened edges. We left them. The plate no longer marked a false death. It reminded us that documents can lie, respectable people can lie, and families can hide destruction beneath the language of concern. Living things carry a different kind of truth. They remember fear, they remember kindness, and given time, they sometimes learn to walk forward beside us again. I watched Lila take her first slow steps with Juniper across the morning arena. Ellie stood near the far gate. Tasha walked at the girl's shoulder. No one rushed her. No one claimed healing before she had earned it. For most of my life, I believed my job was finding where fires began. Ashgrove taught me something more difficult. You also have to decide what deserves rebuilding after the flames are gone. If this story stayed with you, share where you are listening from and subscribe for more stories about dignity, family, and the courage to stand firm when silence becomes too expensive.